It seems like nothing, but don't be fooled by its simplicity. This is powerful. What you're doing there is you're acknowledging the self, the very thing needed to heal your past, the very thing needed to be able to set and hold boundaries and gain respect. So I hope that you will try this. Anybody who's willing to do this, let me know in the comments below. If you start doing it and you see these results, share them in the comments below. So I might encourage others to do the same. It is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly powerful, this thing, because what you're doing is you're acknowledging the self when you do that. Today, I want to talk about our emotions and how they can really harm us when they aren't under control. Emotions are good to have. They're a guidance system telling us which way to go and what decisions to make, but we first have to be in touch with our emotions if we want them to guide us. And I'm not talking about being in touch as in feeling our sadness or anger all day long, although I will be talking about that also, because that becomes problematic. And that's what we're doing when we're involved with abusers, aka narcissists, and also when we have unresolved traumas. We are continuously vibrating anger, sadness, and resentment inside, even though we've slapped a big old band-aid on top of it in the form of overdoing. We're busy making everybody else okay. And what happens when they're just tucked away like that and not identified is we become easily triggered and reactive. And that's what the narcissist wants. It's like suddenly your emotions are a storm that you can't control. Like one small trigger sends your heart racing and your mind spinning, and suddenly you're not sure what's real or what's imagined. And then you self-hate some more for not having controlled yourself. And then the narcissist takes advantage of that and says, see, told you were crazy. But the thing is you can't. It's a trigger that just got pressed. It's like a volcano that's been building pressure beneath the surface for years. The trigger, that's the pebble that finally makes it blow. The real problem is not the pebble. It's the lava that's been trapped inside all along. It's akin to having an old wound that never healed and someone barely brushes up against it. To them, it was nothing. But to you, it feels like the pain is fresh all over again. And that's what happens when we're triggered. It's not about the bump today. It's about the injury that was never treated. Your mind is spinning because of the cognitive dissonance. The cognitive dissonance because you don't know how you feel. There's opposing thoughts and feelings happening simultaneously. You're upset for what someone just said to you, but your rational mind protects you by analyzing, trying to make sense of it in order to survive that pain that you feel. So you have one part hurt and the other part not wanting to believe that someone could intentionally be hurtful. Well, newsflash. Lots of someones in today's world want to intentionally hurt. But like I said, you're spinning, you're confused. And because you're confused, you can't make concrete and healthy decisions. And that's why it is key to learn emotional literacy, because emotional literacy equals clarity. Emotional literacy means that we are able to acknowledge our emotions, and acknowledgement or a lack thereof is what created our dysfunctional relationship experiences to begin with. Once you understand your emotions, it becomes automatic that you no longer let others treat you badly. It becomes automatic and it's natural. Many of us don't realize that our early experiences shape the way that we handle emotions today. If you grew up in an environment where your feelings were dismissed, shamed, or punished, your nervous system learned early on that showing emotions were unsafe. Even subtle messages like don't be so sensitive or you're overreacting can create deep patterns. And if you experience neglect, criticism, or inconsistent care, your body and mind might react more intensely to stress now, sometimes out of proportion to the current situation. It's not a flaw, it's programming. And understanding this can be freeing because once you recognize the source, you can start building new patterns, ones that teach your nervous system safety and self-compassion. And I'll be getting to that today, but first I want to keep going a bit with emotional literacy and its importance. When we don't get in touch with our emotions, when we don't look at them and keep them hidden, often what happens is we can end up in these dark black holes of depression. All we feel is sad or hopeless. And the tears that we cry, they're not tears of grief and healing here. They're tears of victimhood. And by the way, I hate that word. Victimhood, it sounds so shameful. Well, they made it to be that way, to make it sound shameful, but it isn't. Victimhood is when we hand over the remote control of our emotions to someone else. Victimhood is forgetting that your inner state is yours to govern, not theirs to dictate. Victimhood means living on an emotional leash held by someone else's hands. Victimhood begins the moment that we believe that our happiness is someone else's responsibility. I'm on a roll here. Neurochemical reinforcement. When you cry from grief in a healthy way, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering stress hormones like cortisol. But when you cry over and over without resolution, ruminative crying, your brain replays the same neural pathways, reinforcing the emotional pain instead of releasing it. And this repeated activation floods your system with stress hormones, keeping you stuck in a depressed state. Each episode of crying while thinking the same negative emotion or thoughts cements the belief that I am this pain rather than I'm experiencing this pain. It keeps the nervous system in survival mode, and it blocks higher level processing that could lead to acceptance or healing. And radical acceptance is really needed when it comes to toxic relationships. Tears in this state, they aren't clearing your emotions here. They're looping the story of helplessness. The brain loves patterns. If every time you feel sad, you spiral into hours of crying and self-criticism, the brain wires that as your default coping response. And prolonged crying without relief, it dehydrates you, it strains the eyes, and it raises cortisol, which worsens fatigue and emotional regulation. Then sleep and serotonin balance can be affected, deepening your depression. Healing tears are followed by a sense of relief, clarity, or openness. Looping tears feel like you've been wrung out, yet nothing has shifted. You often feel worse. Big difference. And by the way, since we're on the topic of cortisol and sleep deprivation, I know most of you out there are dealing with these issues, and that can lead to disease. So I'm going to leave some links down below with what I take and how I conquered that issue and continue to swear by it. I take magnesium an hour before bed along with ashwagandha, and I sleep like a baby. The ashwagandha is for your resistance to stress. It helps increase energy and memory enhancement also. And the older we get, I know for sure me, the more we need memory enhancement. Magnesium helps calm the nervous system by regulating stress hormones and supporting GABA activity in the brain, which promotes relaxation and deeper sleep. For victims deprived of rest, it can ease anxiety, reduce muscle tension, and restore the body's ability to shift out of constant fight or flight mode. Magnesium is a powerhouse mineral with multiple roles beyond sleep and relaxation. It is vital for survivors of trauma and aging adults like me. And I sound like a commercial here, but I really love this stuff. It's great for bone health, and it prevents osteoporosis risk. It's great for muscle function and cramp prevention. Also for heart health, energy production, blood sugar regulation, and mood and cognitive support. Deficiency is linked to anxiety, irritability, and depression. Anyway, I just wanted to add that in because it's been a lifesaver for me. I sleep like a baby and a full 7 to 8 hours now, which in turn helps me to think straight. And I know that there's all these different types of magnesium out there, but I've done my research, so I'm not going to talk about that today, but I will link the one that I found was the best according to my research, and the one that worked best for me anyway in the description below. Okay, so where were we? Emotions. We believe that we know our emotions. We think I'm hurt or I'm angry, but that's just a sum of all the emotions that we feel underneath that. When we're little, we don't have the capacity to process and file our emotions. We don't develop the analytical mind until around 10 or 11 years old. So we sum it up to one emotion. And once we do develop the analytical mind, if we're shown some sort of unimportance, we stifle them. So they never get organized. Young children, they don't yet have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that helps us analyze, plan, and organize thoughts and feelings. When a child feels a complex mix of sadness, fear, frustration, or shame, they can't label or separate those feelings. There's too many of them. They can't get clear on it. So instead, the brain does a kind of a shortcut. It chooses one word or one label, like anger or hurt, to stand in for the whole messy emotional pile. If a child expresses an emotion and is dismissed, shamed, or ignored, don't be silly, stop crying. The brain learns to stifle or hide certain feelings. Emotions that aren't acknowledged, they don't disappear. Instead, they get stored in the subconscious or emotional memory, unprocessed and unorganized. Normally, as we reach around 10 to 11 years old, like I just mentioned, we develop cognitive tools to reflect and make sense of emotions. And if we're made to feel as though our emotions are important, we can later recognize when others are treating us badly without feeling shame around it. But if early emotions were suppressed or ignored, we have nothing to reference. It's like trying to organize a closet full of clothes that were never tagged or sorted. There's no system in place. So even as adults, when we say I'm angry or I'm sad, we're often only touching the tip of a very deep iceberg of unprocessed emotions beneath. This is why some people feel overwhelmed by emotional intensity or experience mood swings. The underlying emotions never got sorted, so they bubble up unpredictably, and the narcissist loves it. But therapy, journaling, or reflective practices act like a sorting system, helping you open the closet, look at what's there, and give each feeling a name and space. In short, early emotional experiences don't get filed because the brain lacks tools to sort them. And if those emotions are suppressed, they remain chaotic underneath the surface, unprocessed and unlabeled. I mean, think of your emotions like a messy closet full of clothes. When you're little, you don't have the tools to sort it. So you just shove everything in one pile and call it hurt or angry. And that's fine for a while. But as you grow, your mind develops the ability to sort, fold, and organize your clothes. And the problem is if you've been told that your feelings don't matter, or if expressing them cause trouble, you stop opening the closet. The clothes stay in a jumbled heap. They're still there. You still feel them, but they're not arranged. They're not labeled. They're not understood. You only ever notice the top layer, the one that you gave a name to earlier, like anger. So even as adults, I hope this analogy is helping you, trying to make it clear somehow. Let me know in the comments below if you got this. But anyway, even as adults, most of us are living with a closet of unprocessed emotions that never got sorted. They're stuck in chaos underneath the surface. I mean, emotions, they're not just feelings, they're information about what's happening inside of you and around you. For example, fear can signal danger. Sadness can signal a loss. Anger can signal boundaries being crossed. If your emotions were never organized or understood, your brain doesn't have a clear signal to rely on. Unprocessed emotions equals fuzzy data. I mean, you might feel a vague stress or discomfort, but you can't tell exactly what it's telling you. It's like trying to read a map when half of it is smudged. You know something's wrong. You know something's not right, but you can't figure out where or why. Making good decisions, especially about relationships, requires information. What do I feel? Why do I feel this way? Is this okay for me or not? If emotions are unprocessed, these questions are hard to answer. You might feel bad, guilty, or confused, but not able to identify the root. I remember my first experience once I started taking a look at my emotions. Another fight had ensued. And once again, I had been put through the ringer, and I was so exhausted that I found myself going into my bedroom, sitting on the floor and just sobbing. But it was different this time. It wasn't that same ruminative, desperate cry that I was familiar with. That one was one of compassion. The parent me of the child within moved my hand up and down my arm, saying that that wasn't okay, all of those things that he just said to you. And it's not fair that you get treated that way. And there's something really powerful about self-soothing like that. But there was no cognitive dissonance, only compassion for self that had replaced shame and guilt. And that was the beginning of my eyes opening and love turning to self. Toxic relationships exploit your emotions to keep you down. Don't let them win anymore. It isn't making them jealous that's going to put you in the driver's seat. It's by healing. I mean, ask yourself, what do you want to change? Do you want them to change, or do you want you to change? And if you answered you, you're on your way to some really good healing. So congratulations. A toxic or narcissistic partner often confuses or invalidates your emotions, feeding the chaos. And because your emotional closet is already messy, their manipulation makes it impossible to tell right from wrong. You might second guess your instincts or feel guilty about defending yourself because your internal signals, they're not clear. And in response to unclear emotions, people often freeze. I don't know what's right, so I do nothing. Or fawn, I'll just agree to keep the peace. Both are direct consequences of unprocessed emotional data combined with external invalidation. So in short, your messy emotional closet means that your brain doesn't have clean, organized signals to guide your choices. In a toxic relationship, this makes recognizing abuse, making decisions, and asserting boundaries extremely difficult, almost impossible, because your internal compass is cluttered and unreliable. So do yourself a solid and Google list of emotions and grab one that has lots to pick from. And every time, and I mean every time, someone does or makes you feel less than in some form or another, doesn't matter how small it is, regardless as to whether it was intentional or not, and including what feels like minor things like a friend not responding to a text right away. Even the smallest things, if it irks you, go look at your list of emotions and stop for a couple of seconds on each word that you can relate to on how you feel. Just a second or two. Pause on that word. It seems like nothing, but don't be fooled by its simplicity. This is powerful. What you're doing there is you're acknowledging the self, the very thing needed to heal your past, the very thing needed to be able to set and hold boundaries and gain respect. So I hope that you will try this. Anybody who's willing to do this, let me know in the comments below. If you start doing it and you see these results, share them in the comments below. So I might encourage others to do the same. It is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly powerful, this thing, because what you're doing is you're acknowledging the self when you do that. Yeah, I do feel sad. And feel your sadness for a couple of seconds. I do feel disrespected. Just a couple of seconds and let it wash over you. You're acknowledging self. So I leave you with that, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.